The city lights blurred as Alex's taxi sped through the rain-slicked streets. The rhythmic patter of raindrops on the window created a soothing yet exhilarating soundtrack to his journey. Each flash of neon light reflected on the wet pavement seemed to whisper promises of new adventures and endless possibilities. Excitement thrummed in his veins. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the culmination of months of planning and dreaming. His heart raced with anticipation, each beat echoing the thrill of stepping into the unknown. A new job, a fresh start, and this apartment, his own little haven in the bustling city. The thought of decorating his own space, making it uniquely his, filled him with a sense of purpose and joy. He imagined the cozy evenings he would spend there, the friends he would invite over, and the memories he would create. It had all happened so fast. One moment he was stuck in his small hometown, feeling like life was passing him by. And the next, he was here, in the heart of a city that never slept. The fast-paced life of the city was a stark contrast to the slow, predictable rhythm of his previous life, and he welcomed the change with open arms. He smiled, picturing the apartment he had only seen in photos. The vintage furniture, the high ceilings, the large windows. It was everything he had ever wanted. He could already see himself sitting by the window, sipping coffee as he watched the city come to life each morning. High ceilings, large windows, and a vintage charm that resonated with his soul. The apartment was more than just a place to live. It was a sanctuary, a place where he could truly be himself. The thought of finally having a space that reflected his personality and tastes filled him with a deep sense of satisfaction. This was his chance to build a life he could be proud of. He had always dreamed of living in a city, of being part of something bigger than himself. Now that dream was becoming a reality. He felt a surge of hope and determination, knowing that he had the opportunity to create a future that was entirely his own. The taxi screeched to a halt, jolting Alex back to reality. The sudden stop was a reminder that this was not just a dream, it was happening. He took a deep breath, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement as he prepared to step into his new life. He paid the driver and hauled his suitcase up the steps of the old apartment building. Each step felt like a step towards his future, a future that was filled with endless possibilities. The weight of his suitcase was nothing compared to the weight of his dreams and aspirations. A wave of anticipation washed over him as he fumbled with the keys. The sound of the key turning in the lock was like music to his ears, a prelude to the symphony of his new life. He could hardly wait to see the apartment in person, to feel the space that would soon become his home. Stepping inside, he flicked on the light switch. The soft glow of the lights revealed the apartment in all its glory. It was even more beautiful than he had imagined. The vintage furniture, the high ceilings, the large windows, it was perfect. The apartment was bathed in a soft, welcoming glow. He was home. The warmth of the lights made the space feel cozy and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold, rainy night outside. He felt a sense of peace and contentment, knowing that he had made the right decision. He spent the next few hours unpacking, each item meticulously placed. As he arranged his belongings, he felt a sense of accomplishment. Each item had a story, a memory attached to it, and placing them in his new apartment was like weaving the tapestry of his life. As he hung the last of his clothes in the antique wardrobe, a sense of contentment settled over him. The wardrobe, with its intricate carvings and vintage charm, was a perfect fit for his new home. It was a symbol of his new beginning, a reminder of the journey he had taken to get here. The apartment was everything he had hoped for and more. It was a reflection of his personality, a space where he could truly be himself. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that he had created a home that was uniquely his. Exhausted but satisfied, Alex decided to turn in early. The day's excitement had taken its toll, and he was ready to rest. As he lay in bed, he felt a sense of peace and contentment, knowing that he had taken the first step towards his new life. Little did he know, his peaceful haven was about to transform into a nightmare. The city, with all its charm and excitement, held secrets that were yet to be revealed. As he drifted off to sleep, unaware of the impending danger, the night outside grew darker, and the shadows in his apartment seemed to grow longer. The first night in his new apartment was plagued by an unsettling dream. A woman, her face obscured by shadows, stood at the foot of his bed, her sorrowful eyes burning into his. He woke with a gasp, his heart pounding against his ribs. Shaking off the remnants of the nightmare, he decided to make himself some coffee. As he waited for the coffee to brew, his gaze fell upon the antique mirror hanging above the fireplace. He hadn't noticed it before. It was ornately framed, the silver tarnished with age. But what drew his attention was a thin crack running down its center, as if something had struck it with immense force. He reached out, tracing the crack with his fingertip. A shiver ran down his spine. He tried to dismiss it as a flaw in the old glass, but a knot of unease tightened in his stomach. The dream, the woman, the crack, they all felt connected somehow. He finished his coffee, the metallic tang doing little to settle his nerves. He decided to head out for a walk, hoping the fresh air would clear his head. The bustling city streets provided a welcome distraction from the unsettling feeling that lingered in the back of Alex's mind. The city was alive with energy, the hum of traffic and the distant chatter of people creating a symphony of urban life. It was a stark contrast to the quiet unease that had settled within him. He spent the day exploring his new neighborhood, wandering through the maze of streets and alleyways, each turn revealing a new facet of the city's character. The architecture was a blend of old and new, with modern buildings standing shoulder to shoulder with historic structures that whispered tales of the past. Familiarizing himself with the local cafes and shops, he noted the inviting glow of the storefronts, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air, and the soft murmur of conversations drifting out from cozy interiors. Each place seemed to hold a story, a piece of the city's soul. By the time he returned to his apartment, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the city. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, a beautiful yet fleeting moment that marked the end of the day. The cityscape transformed under the twilight, taking on a more mysterious and introspective mood. As he unlocked the door, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The key turned in the lock with a familiar click, but the sense of unease grew stronger. It was as if the very air around him was charged with an unseen energy, a silent warning that something was not right. The air inside felt heavy, charged with an unseen energy. The dim lighting cast long shadows that seemed to dance and flicker, creating an atmosphere that was both eerie and oppressive. It was a stark contrast to the vibrant life outside, a reminder that the walls of his apartment held secrets of their own. He flipped on the light switch, but the sudden brightness did little to dispel the oppressive atmosphere. The light revealed the familiar contours of his living space, but it also seemed to highlight the sense of wrongness that permeated the room. It was as if the light itself was reluctant to penetrate the shadows. And then he saw it. His breath caught in his throat as his eyes fell upon the scene before him. The grandfather clock in the corner, the one that had been standing there proudly just that morning, lay shattered on the floor. Its once majestic presence reduced to a pile of broken wood and glass. The sight was jarring, a stark reminder of the fragility of time and the unexpected nature of life. Its delicate hands were frozen in time, marking the moment of its demise. The clock face, now cracked and marred, seemed to mock him with its silence. It was as if time itself had come to a standstill, leaving him trapped in a moment of confusion and disbelief. He stood there for a moment, heart pounding in his chest, trying to rationalize what he was seeing. His mind raced with questions, each one more unsettling than the last. How could this have happened? What force could have caused such destruction? Had he somehow knocked it over? The thought seemed absurd, but he clung to it, desperate for a logical explanation. He retraced his steps in his mind, trying to recall if he had done anything that could have led to this. But as he took a step closer, he noticed something else. Something that made his blood run cold. His clothes, neatly folded and stacked on the armchair, were now scattered across the floor, as if someone had tossed them aside in a fit of anger. The sight was both puzzling and alarming, a clear sign that someone had been in his apartment. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of his confusion. He was not alone. The realization hit him like a physical blow, sending a shiver down his spine. He scanned the room, his eyes darting to every shadow, every corner, searching for any sign of an intruder. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of his own ragged breathing. He knew he had to act, but the weight of fear held him in place, paralyzing him with its icy grip. Panic clawed at Alex's throat. He backed away from the scattered clothes, his eyes darting around the room, searching for a logical explanation, for something that could make sense of the chaos that had suddenly enveloped his life. The room, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap, its familiar corners and comforting shadows transformed into menacing shapes and lurking threats. His mind raced, desperately trying to piece together the fragments of his shattered reality. His gaze fell upon the apartment door. It was slightly ajar, just as he had left it earlier that evening. But now, in the dim light, it seemed to mock him, a silent witness to his growing terror. Had he forgotten to lock it? Or had someone been inside? The questions swirled in his mind, each one more unsettling than the last. The possibility that someone had entered his home, his private space, without his knowledge or consent sent a shiver down his spine. The air grew thick with dread, each breath a struggle. He needed to get out, to find somewhere safe, somewhere far away from the creeping sense of doom that now filled the room. But his feet felt like lead, his body refusing to obey the urgent commands of his mind. He turned towards the door, his hand reaching for the handle, but a sound stopped him dead in his tracks. A soft, mournful sob, coming from the direction of the bathroom. His blood ran cold, the sound piercing through the fog of his fear like a knife. The sobbing was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a haunting melody that seemed to echo through the silent apartment. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Was it real, or was his fear playing tricks on him? He stood there, frozen, his mind a chaotic storm of fear and disbelief. The sobbing continued, each note a reminder of the horror that awaited him. He knew he had to move, to confront whatever was making that sound, but his body refused to cooperate. Slowly, his hand trembling, he reached for the bathroom doorknob. The cold metal felt like ice against his skin, a stark contrast to the heat of his fear. He hesitated, his mind screaming at him to turn back, to run, but he knew he couldn't. He had to know. It turned with a click, and he pushed the door open, bracing himself for whatever horror awaited him. The door creaked on its hinges, the sound echoing through the silent apartment like a death knell. The sight that greeted him was more terrifying than anything his imagination could have conjured. The bathroom, once a place of solace and routine, was now a scene of unimaginable horror. Lying in the bathtub, her lifeless eyes staring vacantly at the ceiling, was the woman from his dream. The dream that had haunted him for weeks, the dream that he had dismissed as a mere figment of his imagination, was now a horrifying reality. Her long, dark hair fanned out around her head like a macabre halo, and her pale skin glistened under the harsh bathroom light. The sight was both surreal and terrifying, a grotesque tableau that seemed to mock his every attempt at rational thought. He felt his knees buckle, the weight of the horror pressing down on him, threatening to crush him under its unbearable weight.